Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? Today is Thursday, July 14th, 2022. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I am doing very well. Thank you. Hoping that my voice comes across clear and that the music or the sound in the background is at a sufficient level where you can hear it, but it's not drowning my voice out. I think I've hopefully got the rhythm of doing these, voiceover videos, which I really, really like doing. This, speaking of the subject that we're going to talk about, dimensions of consciousness and energetic resonance is one of the things I'm going to talk about. I notice a different frequency and a different energy in my audience and in the type of responses that I get, and just in the overall vibration of, once I do these videos, you kind of put them out into the ethers and then they kind of do their own thing. But I feel like it shifts the energy, the residual energy, so to speak. Just an observation that I've kind of been paying attention to, which I definitely like and appreciate. So hopefully you guys enjoy these videos as well. Before I get into the subject, if you want to see this video in its entirety, as well as access all of my exclusive content, you can do so with my private exclusive membership channel, or you can access this video on demand on my website. All of that information will be in the description. And so without further ado, I want to get into this subject, dimensions of consciousness. And this is something that, sometimes I have ideas for videos or topics that I want to talk about. So I'll jot them down on a sticky note and, kind of go on with whatever I have going on. But it'll still be sitting there in the back of my mind, this particular subject. And this is one of those subjects. And I've kind of been chipping away at this in all of the recent content that I've been doing. But today I wanted to talk about it specifically. What inspired me to actually sit down today and say, okay, I want to talk about this is I was watching this video. A sister sent this video to me, and thank you so much. I did receive it and I did watch it. I've actually watched it twice, or watched not the full video, but certain parts of it I've watched multiple times. It is of a pastor. Let me see, I think I wrote his name down. Well, I can access the video here anyway. Pastor Stephen Darby. He has a video called CERN, CERN, and then the end. This video was posted 7 years ago. It's got 137,000 views. So obviously a lot of people have heard this and are familiar with this particular minister. The page has a large following as well. And so I was listening to this video and I was really appreciating, it's very rare when you hear spiritual teachers, spiritual leaders, spiritual guides, talk about science. And because that's kind of my lane, that's really where I've been for the past, I would say 7 years, really focusing on kind of marrying spirituality with science. I was very impressed, right? And he was going into the spiritual aspect of the CERN program, or this particular utensil's not the word I'm looking for, but this this portal, if you will, of consciousness, right? And so he's breaking down, through the Bible, different aspects of the Bible that talk about this particular technology and the beast, and how Satan has been trying to find its way into the physical realm, but has not been able to. And so this is their portal that they're creating so that can take place, right? So he's giving all of these really intelligent and clear perspectives on things of modern technology today that you very rarely hear preachers, pastors, but not only that, metaphysics teachers, people who kind of delve in the metaphysics and spiritual teachings. They very rarely marry that with, okay, here's what's happening on the ground, here's how this actually applies to all of the darkness happening in the world, right? A lot of times it's more so based around ignoring the darkness, if you will. And there's a there's an aspect of that that's important, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because those of us who are beacons of light and who are the children of the sun, so to speak. And when I say that, you should automatically internally know if that applies to you. That isn't determined or dictated by your religious affiliation or what someone else decides or declares for you. That is only something that can be determined through an inner knowing, right? But those of us who are walking in the light at this time, there's going to be a very heavy, a heavy weight to this, a burdensome aspect to this. But there has also been a very staunch increase, if that's the word, in the requirements and in the qualifications for bliss, for enlightenment, for living a abundant, thriving, God-filled, love-filled existence in this time. That's because the levels of evil and wickedness and chaos and destruction that are happening around us are increasing by day. And if you are of the children of the sun, then you already understand this, right? So what it's going to take, what it took in 1980, what it took in, 2000, what it took in 2010, and what it's going to take for 2022 moving forward, it's like all bets, not all bets are off, but all bets have drastically increased in terms of urgency and, attachment to the outcome and all of the different potential factors that could play out, right? Everything has been magnified exponentially. Exponentially, is that a word? Expeditiously or exponentially? Y'all let me know. I think it's exponentially. But so let me go back to why I got into this today, right? I wanted to talk about this today because I'm listening to this pastor and he's giving this beautiful, powerful sermon, well educated, well informed, and he's got the spiritual perspective. So he's like hitting, and I'm excited to listen to this because again, this is very rare to hear this, right? And so he gets towards in the middle of it, kind of like sprinkled throughout. He had some, some very religious or Christian orientated kind of language, but that doesn't really bother me because I know what most people's interpretation of the Bible is, and then I have my understanding, right? So whereas Christians may be awaiting for the return of Christ, so to speak, right? Or the return of Jesus. Well, I'm not waiting for the return of Jesus. I am striving to become in alignment with Christ consciousness. That's my concept of Jesus, right? There have been many Jesuses that have been among us. Jesus and Christ represents an avatar or a dimension or a state of consciousness, just like Judas, right? So, and all of the different avatars throughout the spiritual teachings, not just in the Bible, but in the Quran also. And this is one thing that he said that threw me off when he started talking about the Quran and all of that other stuff, like those aren't righteous, real spiritual books. Well, now, I have to question if you are really coming in the name of and in the nature of the Creator, because God is not about separating and dividing. That's what religion does. God doesn't do that. And when I say God, I always have to say this because somebody always comes in the comment and starts talking about the meaning, the definition of the word God. Like, we're way beyond that now. I'm trying to create a platform and a message that reaches people beyond religion, beyond race, beyond culture, beyond land borders, right? Because right now we need all hands on deck. Humanity is in a very dire situation and circumstance right now, particularly depending on your state of consciousness and awareness. which is going to determine how things moving forward in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, etc., are going to play out for you and are going to play out for your family and your loved ones. So as I'm listening to this pastor, right, and he's telling me, excuse me, not he's telling me, wait, let me make sure I want to make sure I started my clock. I'm timing myself to make sure I don't go over. Okay, perfect. So as I'm listening to this pastor, once he gets towards the end, he starts saying the only way to get through this is by something, 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 your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And immediately as he starts to say this to me, the energetic tethering and the energetic resonance that I was having through my being inspired from his message started to weaken immediately, right? And I'm not saying, throw the baby out with bathwater. No, like I said, I went back and listened to several points in this video, even after I had that initial reaction about the whole, the Jesus aspect of it. So I still have been able, and I'm still talking about it now, right? So obviously this brother has done his job in terms of sparking the consciousness and the, divine mind, so to speak, to get us thinking beyond the limitations of our everyday lives and start really paying attention to what's happening beyond us. He gets major credit for that, right? But then as I'm listening, and this is a balance of a scientific and a presentation data type, conversation or speech, but it's also it's also being offered in a spiritual connotation. And so as I heard him start talking about the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and he was minimizing the Bible and other spiritual teachings and whatnot, it let me know, okay, this is this dimension of consciousness, that how the separation of minds, people are being placed in these little divergent categories, not willfully, not openly professing this, but in their level of understanding and consciousness and awareness and how they're operating in the world. So he, with those statements, then magnify the 800 and some odd thousand people that actually watch this, right? Plus you have the billions of people who identify as Christians around the world, the billions of people who identify as Muslims around the world. There's some Muslims that would have heard that, and the minute that he disrespected the Quran, would have immediately shut that information off. But what if in a moment of dire straits for this man or for his flock or for anyone that identifies with any religion, at a time in the most need of your most need, help comes in the form of a Muslim woman in a hijab? So, and it's very important that we have this conversation about religion in context, right? Because for me, personally, I believe that the religions of the world have absolutely failed humanity. I'm not anti-religious. I've never been anti-religious. I went through my, the Bible is a poison book phase when I started learning about how it had been tampered with and da 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 da. I've had my different perspectives and vocally talked about things in the Quran that kind of didn't sit well with me, but still honoring and respecting the wisdom of the Quran, right? And different teachings from different spiritual people around the world, particularly indigenous people, African people, right? You can find the commonality in them all. But when it all boils down to it, in 2022, here we are, almost 8 billion strong. I don't know what that number is now. But for humanity, the global population, to be as overwhelmingly manipulated and hoodwinked and played for a fool. Talk about don't pick up the wooden nickel. We made a raft of wooden nickels. completely desensitized to love of our planet, completely desensitized to love for one another, completely desensitized to children. I mean, the whole abortion conversation is happening in the ripple effects of this frequency of we don't want children, while there is a global agenda by the powers that used to be. I like to speak my prophecy forward. I like to, when I talk to you guys, we're writing prophecy. So the powers that used to be mass siphoning of human energy and human consciousness and human awareness. And they put out an article, or they put out pass a bill, or some random politician has an interview, or a Black man gets killed in America, or some Black girl in a school gets disrespected because of her Afro puffs, and it's sending consciousness ping, ping, ping all over the place, the collective consciousness, so much so that the individual consciousness and awareness never has time to fully settle itself and be present and be aware and be mindful and be quiet and be still and be silent, because that is where God is. And I'm saying this right now, and a small number of people understand exactly what I'm saying. And then there are some people that have no clue what I'm talking about. What do you mean? Someone left a comment on the video, one of the videos, and said something about the pharaohs. God destroyed the pharaohs, something about Egypt and the biblical aspect where it talks about God destroying the pharaohs, right? And my response was, it's unfortunate that a lot of you guys have dare I say, have mistaken the Bible as a history book, a book full of symbolic language and coded language. The majority of people interpret that book as a history book. And that's not to say that some of those things didn't actually take place in history, but all of those things are taking place all of the time. There's always a Jesus-like caricature or character or person or energy or frequency or consciousness and awareness among us, always. Some of us embody that. Some of us embody the lesser aspects of our characteristic, or the lower aspects of our nature, which are also played out by different characters in the Bible and in the Quran and in the scriptures of the world. So as I'm listening, I'm hearing this, brother, and then I'm also thinking to myself, right? Because I've traveled America, and I've spoken in churches, and I've spoken in, a lot of different arenas, and I've been able to be in those rooms and to actually feel and transmute the energy, right? Most of the time, the energy is very heavy, it's very dense, it's very lost, it's very needy. A lot of people in the churches are very, very needy, and have so many expectations on their pastors, and so many expectations on the other people that are in those spaces. So much focus on and emphasis on things outside of themselves, because their personal power is not being stimulated the way that it should be through the word. If we're in fact teaching God's word, right? So we have these environments in churches and in religious places where the only time people really feel connected to, or as if they're interacting with God or with a higher source energy, is when they're in those buildings. And then when they leave those buildings, the frequency and the vibration that they're tethered to within them leaves with them, or it doesn't go with them, I should say. And so they're stuck in menial jobs, stuck in remedial relationships, very difficult in communicating and having loving and transformational relationships with other people. How do we know that? Because we can look at the condition of the world. That's not just for Christians, that's for religion across the board. We can look at the condition of the world. We can look at the condition of the mindsets of our children, the levels of depression and stress and anxiety and suicide, mass shootings happening all over America, like 90 going north. Like what pastor, what imam would stand up and take strong credit and strong praise for the condition of the world today based on their teachings, leading your flock in the right direction, right? The mindset of the average Black Christian in America, and this is one of the things that I recognized when I was in Atlanta, right, and traveling down south among the Bible Belt, where these people are so, beautiful. Our people are beautiful everywhere, right? Loving, good natured, good hearted, just really, kind of victims of being in this chaotic, crazy world, right? But now the decisions and the choices that all of us make have very dire consequences, regardless of where we are on the scale of like kindness, loving, peaceful people versus, shrewd or mean or demonic or evil or vindictive or neutral or passive. Everybody's decisions are coming full circle in this moment in time.